Hi there, brilliant people. So today's question is, what questions should I ask my intuition? And this is a good question to ask because on this channel we've talked before about how you connect to your intuition, and it's about using your focus, and you want to ask your intuition questions, because asking your intuition questions is a really good way to activate your intuition. And so once you activate your intuition, it then you go into that state of active listening, and you're listening to the answer to your question. So, I mean, as always, with time, you'll figure out your own questions. So I'm assuming that this question is really more about, what questions do I ask to get started with my intuition? And like most skills, it's good to start in a really simple place. So when I'm teaching people, for example, as I talk about in my book, The Soul's Brain, when I talk about that, and we're using our soul seat, we start with very simple questions, because first of all, when we're using the soul seat to help us tap into our intuition, we are doing that initially with the soul seat. It's a very simple answer. It's almost like a hotter, colder, this way, that way, warm, cold. I said hotter, colder, didn't I? Right, wrong, except not right, wrong in the bigger sense, but just what's right and what's wrong for you. In other words, with the soul seat, it's like what's going to help you connect more to yourself, what's going to perhaps take you a little bit away from yourself. And so because of that, when you're first working with your intuition, it is better to ask what they call closed questions. Now, a closed question just simply means it's a yes or no answer. In other words, you ask, do I want to eat an apple? Well, it's either yes or no. I mean, okay, yeah, it could be maybe, but by and large, really, it's a yes or no answer. You either want to eat an apple or you don't want to eat an apple. So one of the ways you practice asking your intuition questions is with those right, wrong, yes, no answers. And in fact, one of the ways, apart from using the soul seat, that people first of all train their intuition is with dowsing, like with a pendulum. And they tend to use that also initially by yes, no, like generally the way I was taught is that's yes, so the pendulum swing backwards and forwards, or no, it's swinging that way. And of course, if you're actually dowsing, your hand's not actually moving, it's just the pendulum that's moving. But those closed answers, so do I want an orange? Yes or no. Do I want an apple? Yes or no. So by asking those questions, and I find, because food of course is of interest, I find that food, because it is a very simple yes or no answer, that's a good way to first of all train your intuition. But as you work with your intuition and your ability to actually sort of focus your intuition, because as we've talked about before, when you're tapping into your intuition, you're actually tapping into a lot more information. So in many ways, in order to use your intuition, you've got to be able to focus it by having a focus on a specific outcome. And when you're asking what they call an open question, so an open question, rather than asking, would you like to eat an apple, you're asking something like, what do you think of apples? Well, that's not a yes and no question. So that's what they call an open question. You could talk like for this much about what do you think of apples? I think they're yummy, but I prefer pink ladies. but we all have our favorites, I'm sure. Or it can be a really big answer about apples now and what it means, and all the different agriculture and what their general nutrition is like, and on and on. Anyway, getting a little bit off topic. So the problem is that when we ask an open question, we can, of our intuition, all of that information will just go and just land in your head. So this might sound so going from closed questions, which it's a really good way to get your intuition started. So you can ask your intuition anything, but initially, but do your best to make it an open or a closed question, like one of those yes/no questions. But as you develop your intuition, you're going to want to eventually get to a more open question, because that is, you're going to get much more interesting answers. That really tends to be more when you get really sort of innovative or radical answers, like things that you perhaps wouldn't have thought of consciously before. But in order to do that, you're going to have to learn to manage all of those questions. All of that answer, like that all of that information that could come in, which is just way too much for the answer to be useful. So one of the ways that you can practice, I'm not sure if you're familiar with something called 21 questions. It's a kid's game, and when myself and my brothers and sisters were young, and my parents were driving, and in Australia you can drive, when you go for a drive, it can be quite lengthy. So, and we were all sort of beating each other up in the back seat. My father had a few different ways of getting us to calm down and stop beating each other up in the back seat. And one of the ways he would do is he would say, animal, mineral, or vegetable, which is the first question in 21 questions. And so in 21 questions, you can think of anything. It has to be an actual tangible object, like it could be a rhinoceros. It can't just be beauty, because beauty is intangible. It's not an object. So it has to be something tangible. But so the first question is animal, mineral, or vegetable. And obviously a rhinoceros is an animal. So that's your first question. So now you have 20 questions left. And every question that you're asking has to be one of those closed questions, one of those yes/no questions. So it teaches us how we can go from those closed questions to actually asking really big questions, but getting down to that answer really efficiently. And we can, by using our closed questions, we can actually tap into all of that, but learn to rapidly sort through it. So what you do with your 20 questions is, sorry to talk math at you for a second, but it's set theory. So like if you've got the set of, because animals, so you've got the set of all animals. Now, if you just start guessing, if you just go, is it a cat? Is it a bird? Is it a fish? Is it a platypus? Chances are you're not going to get it in 20 questions. So you have to think of it in sets, like, so you've got the set of all animals. So the first question might be, does it live on land? Yes. So now you've eliminated all the animals in the ocean. And then you might go, is it a domesticated animal? No. So now you know it's a wild animal. So essentially what you're trying to do is with every question, you're attempting to sort of halve the size of your set. And when you actually get good at it, you'd be surprised how often you'll actually win 21 questions, because you'll actually get to what the animal is within those 20 questions. It's a little bit like, it's sort of like the reverse of, if you've ever heard of that thing of like when you put 1 penny or a cent, I suppose these days, on the first square of a chessboard, and then you put 2 pennies on the second one and 4 pennies on the third one. So with each square, you're doubling it. And by the time you get to an end, it's some enormous amount of money. Well, with 21 questions, you're doing the reverse. You're starting out with that enormous amount of money, and with each question, you're halving it. So you can, by learning to do that, you can train your intuition to be open to all of that information, but still very rapidly get down to the one answer that you're looking for. And of course, in many ways, this is how science works, where, they're looking to eliminate things, but it works because it helps you focus. It helps you go from the all possible answers to the one answer you're looking for. So, in other words, what question should I ask my intuition? It's probably not the answer you were expecting, but closed questions. But closed questions, just simple ones to start with until you get the feel of what is yes and what is no in your intuition. Once you've got that, then you continue to expand yourself to asking yes, no questions by starting, like opening up your intuition and then asking of all the possible answers, learning to use your yes, no questions to go from all possible answers down to the one answer that you're looking for. And of course, the answer that you're looking for is to remember that you're brilliant.